executed by individuals based in Pakistan. But I think the point needs to be kept in mind that India is a victim of many kinds of terrorism at home as well as abroad.
Glenn Burney, a final thought on that?
Well, the pictures of the gunman shows a red ribbon wearing on the right hand of the individual, which is a Hindu symbol. Islamic person, whatever you call them, wouldn't wear this. Another thing,
actually, that's not true. I actually lived in Pakistan, and they do wear. They're, you know, the string around the wrist that you note. It's not simply Hindu. You can go to shrines and get this thing tied around your wrist. You know, I actually lived in Pakistan. That's actually not exactly true. And remember, if you're going to be going into a foreign country to perpetrate an attack, my understanding is they also learned Hindi words. You can tell fairly quickly from an uncareful speaker of Urdu who is from where because of the vocabulary that they chose. It's not unreasonable to think that this might have been part of their operational security.
Los Angeles, next caller on our Democrats line. Good morning.
Good morning. When you say that it's time to do something, and the country of Pakistan is obviously a weak country, it sounds like you're promoting violence. And since the Punjabi exist across the region, isn't it time to form some kind of regional group to deal with these problems?
Well, I don't advocate violence. That's in no way what I mean. What is interesting since 9/11 is that the United States has really sent a mixed message to Pakistan. So in the early days of the war on terrorism, we were really focusing on al-Qaeda. We weren't even initially necessarily interested that Pakistan clamp down on the Taliban, believe it or not. And in fact, our demands that Pakistan focus more intently its efforts upon the Taliban were quite late and really became noticeable in the 2007 timeframe, although some people were pushing for this in 2006. And we have been very lackadaisical in insisting that Pakistan shut down militant groups operating ostensibly with the aim of Kashmir and India. There have been a couple of times in 2002 when India and Pakistan were at a near-war state following another massacre perpetrated by the Lashkar-e-Taiba in Kaluchak, in which they went into the residential area of wives and children associated with the Indian Army and mowed them down mercilessly. There was a time when the U.S. thought the two countries were going to go to war. At that juncture, we really sent the message to then-President Musharraf saying that you really need to do something about these groups. But the pressure has been very lackadaisical. And so when I say it's time to do something, I actually mean more along the lines of that we need to first send a very clear message to Pakistan that you cannot go after some terrorist groups while letting others free to flourish. The Red Mosque that captivated so many people's attention last summer was in fact previously an ISI asset. Masood Azhar, who is the mastermind of another militant group, cruises around freely in Pakistan without restraint. So when I say it's time to do something, I actually mean a suite of things. First is sending a very clear message to Pakistan that all groups must be eliminated. I have a strong preference for law and order approaches, arresting them, trying them. But we also have been giving Pakistan a lot of money, some $12 billion, over half of which has largely gone through what's called coalition support funds, which reimburses Pakistan for its cooperation on the war on terrorism. It's not really clear that that program has functioned as it should, but it really has not had, there have been no impulses to subject that to verification that Pakistan's actually fully cooperating in the war on terrorism by comprehensively cracking down on militant groups. At the same time, much of our focus has gone to the Pakistan Army, and anyone that focuses on counterterrorism will tell you that you also need to have robust police and domestic intelligence agencies. So we also need to have a comprehensive plan to work with the Pakistanis to not only fortify their will to go after these groups, but also to build the kind of law enforcement institutions that will allow them to do so. Does that answer your question?
And the Washington Post Foreign Service report this morning, U.S.-India pressure Pakistan to cooperate in the Mumbai probe, and they write that Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, who's in the region, said the Bush administration is urging Pakistan, the government there, to, quote, follow the evidence wherever it leads, saying transparency is critical in this investigation into the three-day siege, leaving 174 dead, nearly 300 wounded in the megacity of Mumbai. Next to Columbia, Maryland, on our Independence line. Hi.
Yes, my question for Ms. Fair is, recently there was an election in Pakistan and democracy came back, and army has always been in the power in Pakistan, and they're trying to force this democracy out of Pakistan. So they attack India, so India kind of responds to them, and army wants to come back in power. Remember that in 1999, Musharraf did the same thing. He attacked in Kargil, and he pushed out the previous prime minister. So I think this army is playing the same game, and I think it's ISI and the Pakistani military is responsible for this attack. What is your comment on that?
You know, honestly, I think a lot of people have noted the similarities to 1999 when Nawaz Sharif was trying to normalize relations with India through the Lahore bus diplomacy. And as then Prime Minister Vajpayee was coming to Lahore on the bus for peace, President Musharraf, who was then the Chief of Army Staff, was mobilizing for the Kargil operation, which really put a dampener on the Indo-Pakistan peace process. I think a lot of people share that interpretation. You know, clearly the civilian government, it's not in their portfolio to do this kind of thing. It's not even in their portfolio to control the army and the intelligence agency. And so one has to ask, if Lashkar-e-Taiba did this, and if their ties to the ISI are as everyone believes, then one then has to pose the question that you did. Why did they do this? And I think a lot of people would agree that the Pakistan army, as inherited by Kiani, is a demoralized army. It's been forced to do a lot of things it didn't want to do, including turn its back on the so-called Kashmir Jihad, do a U-turn on the Taliban, and for years it's been forced to kill Pakistanis in the border area along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. And so I think a number of people have wondered if this was a way to do as you said, which is sort of derail the Indo-Pakistan rapprochement, which in some ways benefits the army. But there might be another interpretation. You know, the Pakistan army has been wanting for some time to sort of wiggle free of the U.S. embrace. Yes, it's enjoyed the financial benefits of the relationship, but it hasn't enjoyed the pressure to do things, and it hasn't wanted to do the things that the U.S. has asked it to do. So another potential interpretation that this was equally aimed at sabotaging the U.S.-Pakistan relationship.
We go to Fairfax Station in Virginia. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. One thing that's getting reported on the internet and some of the foreign sites is the fact that some of the terrorists stayed at a Jewish visitor center for up to 2 weeks prior. And as late as 1967, Ben-Gurion had said, you know, the Prime Minister of Israel had said that Pakistan was a bigger threat than the Arabs. Also, Israel has a long history of posing as Muslims and attacking friends, so-called friends, like the USS Liberty, where 40 U.S. sailors were killed, and the King David Hotel, where 90 British people were killed. So why is there never even a mention or even a whisper of this on the mainstream press, but on the internet we can get this information? Thank you.
Well, a couple of things make me dubious about this. I share some of the general concerns that you've articulated. I'm certainly a very big critic of the occupation, and I think that for us to resolve the global Islamist issue, we really do have to address forthrightly the Palestinian-Israeli conflict with justice. So leaving aside that, because I think that's a sort of undercurrent of your query, I don't buy the conspiracy that Israel's behind this for a number of reasons. Not only has India been forging a very robust security relationship with the United States, long before it did so with the United States, it actually did so with Israel. India and Israel, they normalized their relationship in 1991, but their security cooperation and their military-to-military training actually predated the normalization of their relations. And in fact, Israel is the largest supplier of weaponry to India. I just don't think there's any credible reason that I should rationally convince myself that Israel's behind this attack when the preponderance of evidence really suggests a different origin.
Christine Fair, the Rand Corporation senior political scientist, we thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
In just a moment, we'll turn our attention to former FEMA Director James Lee Witt with a proposal on national catastrophic insurance, a plan for preparing for future disasters. That's coming up next.